Thanks so much for joining us for the webinar. I'm going to be telling you about our project here in Samana, about the private city that we're going to be building from scratch that combines the best of both worlds, which is the untouched nature and the Caribbean paradise, combined with high quality infrastructure typical for European or North American projects. But let's start from the beginning. We are living in a world that has changed rapidly in the last years. Post-pandemic world allows us to work more and more remotely. Hybrid work also allows more and more workers to work remotely. And there's also more and more wealthy individuals who want to move their capital out of European Union or United States and be in a more independent country, and also allocate their cash somewhere else, especially in this globalized world. The problem is those destinations that we look at when we travel somewhere for a week or 2 weeks, and we think we can also live there maybe a month or two, are not fitted to live there for a longer period of time, simply because the infrastructure required to build a resort is much different than infrastructure required for residents to live there for a couple of months. Resorts tend to have way more restaurants, nightclubs, different type of excursions, and resorts for residents need more pharmacies, parks, and places just to go walk with your family and meet your friends. So when those typical exotic destinations are growing and get more and more the residents, especially in the exotic destinations, they face a couple challenges. And I'm gonna focus on 4 of them and how we address them. Well, one is chaos. Usually there's a lack of master planning, and a lot of small developers move in. I'm looking at an example of Bali or Tulum in Mexico. And mainly developers focus on finding a piece of land, buying, building, selling, finding a piece of land, building, selling. No one takes care of the master plan. So you're ending up with a city like Tulum that doubled its size in the last 8 years, where no new infrastructure was really built properly. And it's really a nightmare to live there for more than a couple of weeks. On the other side of the spectrum is the problem of over-commercialization. Usually when you look at the resorts, they are built by corporations that go after the scale. And you end up with a city with a lot of concrete, a lot of resorts that focuses on getting as many units as possible in order to then bring online travel agencies and airlines. And the cities really lose the very reason that we wanted to move there in the first place. On the other side, you have a problem of boredom. When the real estate developers build big communities, they usually focus only on one demographics. And you end up having a community of, for example, of wealthy retirees that is super, super boring, especially when you're younger and you want to live there longer. So it's super important to address the aspect of having a diverse community that lives there. Another paradox and a problem is the fact that usually beautiful exotic destinations that we want to move to are built by small players. Those eco lodges, those beautiful small ecological projects that really entice us to go there, they are always, unfortunately, losing over time to big players. And big players usually are more greedy. And the problem is that if you want, the challenges that if you want to build a bigger project, you want to become big in order to be able to afford to be ecological. But at the same time, you don't want to lose the very reason that you decided to build this community in the first place, so not to be too greedy. So the way Samana Group is responding to these challenges are the following. In order to control the chaos, you have to control the land. I'm going to tell you in more detail in a few minutes how we ended up where we are right now, but we are proud to say that we control around 10,000 acres of land, which is owned by our group, and we can build this whole project. 10,000 acres is around 4,000 hectares, 40 square kilometers. We can build this project faster or slower, but we do not want to lose control, and we don't want to be under the pressure of any investment banks and financial institutions that will force us to build something faster or maybe at lower quality, simply to get more profit faster. It's important to address society mix and build a community for different demographic groups, because that's when people want to live there. I'm going to address that in the further slides. But let's quickly discuss about the location of Samana Group project. Well, we're talking about Dominican Republic, very interesting country that is, you can call it the Thailand of the Americas, that is placed in a very comfortable position, under 4 hours of flights from the bigger purchasing power when it comes to buying second homes. I'm talking about the east side of the North America, so United States and Canada. When people buy their second homes, they usually don't want to fly more than 4 hours, and they don't want to drive more than an hour from the airport. So we can get in less than 4 hours to the main hubs on the east side, which is Miami, New York, Toronto, and Montreal. But other than that, the Dominican Republic is just a cool country. It's not just your typical Caribbean island with palms and beach. It's a big economy. I'm going to talk about that in a second. It's a very versatile country with very high mountains and forests and jungles and deserts, and growing economy. You can go to the city and have your shopping mall, and you don't have to get on a plane to get to the civilization. You just get into the car and you drive the highway, get there. And they even have a racetrack, which I personally love. But let's talk numbers. Depending on the data, DR is either the 8th biggest or the 12th biggest economy in Latin America. It's by far the largest Caribbean economy, 2.5 times bigger than Costa Rica. And it's a very accommodating culture, especially for the Westerner, because 85% of Dominicans are Roman Catholic. The mix of Latin and island culture and the fact that people live here in big families makes this culture very open to foreigners. And this is a country of people that really honor and pay attention to nature. Out of all the exotic destinations, when I compare the Caribbean and Dominican Republic, especially to, for example, Indonesia, Philippines, or Thailand, DR has way more accommodating weather. You have like almost 5 days of summer, much less humidity, much lower average temperatures, which basically allow us to live here way more comfortably than other foreign destinations. A little bit more numbers. Dominican Republic is the biggest tourist destination in the whole Caribbean. Also, when it comes to golfs, there are more than 30 golf courses in Dominican Republic. It is the biggest hotel market in the whole Caribbean. We're talking about, I believe, 150 to 175,000 hotel rooms in total. And although it's such a big market, it still is one of the best performing markets in the whole region. If you're from the hotel industry or short-term rental, you know how hard it is to achieve anything above 75% of average occupancy. Dominican Republic has 7 international airports, which is, in compared to Poland, 12. GDP per capita of Dominican Republic is $8,500, which is like Poland in 2005, which is already after Poland joined the European Union. So it's really a wealthy economy. And it's very well connected with the rest of the world. To sum up, Dominican Republic has become one of the most favorite countries for wealthier Americans and Canadians to settle. It also has come as a response to the changes in the Dominican law, which allow the foreigners to purchase real estate as full ownership, and residential and different type of tax incentives, which allow for foreign individuals to get the visa if you invest here, or if you're a renter. I will talk details in a second. Way different than Costa Rica. Costa Rica is, although it has similar nature, it's a much smaller economy. Like I said, in the DR, you don't have to get on a plane to get to the much bigger city if you need it once in a while. Or different than Puerto Rico, which is really under the US influence, and it's much more expensive and not as safe. Within DR, we are focusing with our developments on the Samana Peninsula, which is on the northeast side of the island. You could see this being highlighted here. What's interesting about Samana is that for many decades, it was really like a forgotten peninsula, almost. Although all the Dominicans knew that this is the most beautiful region in the whole country. Well, I'm talking about forgotten, quote unquote, when it comes to business, simply because it was so far from the rest of the country. Although it's only 100 kilometers from the Santo Domingo, there was no highway. And you had to get through the mountains and national park to get there. So it was like an 8-hour drive until the highway was built. And 7 years ago, from 8 hours drive, everything turned down to an hour and a half, 2 hours. And that really kickstarted the growth of Samana, which is, besides being well connected with the rest of the world and the country, the most beautiful region in the whole Dominican Republic. Because if I told you that DR is versatile, then Samana is the most versatile when it comes to flora and fauna, most versatile region in the whole country. What's interesting about Samana is that because it has been so detached from the rest of the country for many decades, it has been an interesting destination for have settled mainly in 3 small towns, Las Terrenas, Santa Barbara, and Las Galeras. And for a combined population of around 40,000 people in those towns, we're looking at around 5,000 foreign residents who have brought their culture, their small businesses, shops, restaurants, and gave this cool cosmopolitan vibe to the beautiful local culture that it already had. What makes Samana special as well is that we have 4 national parks. We have access to the Atlantic Ocean on the north and to the bay on the south. We have our own airport, which connects us with Miami, Toronto, Montreal, and New York. And if I'm correct, 2 or 3 times per week. There's also a new network of roads being built in Samana together with the water connection, which has made Samana the cleanest region in the whole country when it comes to water. New marina being renovated, and the presidential's focus, besides other regions in the like Miches or Pedernales, allows us to say that this is one of the coolest and most up-and-coming region of the whole Caribbean. Obviously, still ahead of the curve, which is for us a good thing because we can shape its growth. And at the end, I just want to mention the safety issues. Samana is the safest region in the whole Dominican Republic. Usually accidents and crime happens on the road, especially when you drive without the helmet. In big cities, like in all of the world, 80% of crime happens there. So you just don't go to certain areas in the evening, everywhere in the world. And obviously in resort destinations, because those weekend or 1 week tourists are easy target for petty crime. And because Samana doesn't really have any all-inclusive resorts, you also don't have that petty crime happening here. Residents tend to know how to behave, and that's why the crime rate here is the lowest in the whole region. It's comparable to Poland, for example, and in Central Europe. Like I said, the timing couldn't be better for Samana. But let me tell you a little bit more about who is behind Samana Group. We are a team of 3 co-founders, and each one of us comes from a different world. I am most of my experience comes from running IT companies and new technology enabled companies in frontier and emerging markets. Most of my experience comes from Sub-Saharan Africa, where I was able to co-found the biggest online travel agency and e-commerce company, which we then were able to IPO on New York Stock Exchange. So you can call me the startup guy. That brings some innovative tools when it comes to sales, marketing, and fundraising into real estate. Shannon Robertson is our most experienced guy by far when it comes to real estate. He's been the managing director of JLL for the last 22 years, opening all Latin American offices of JLL being the 3rd biggest commercial real estate company in the world. And Thomas is, you can call it our tree hugger, our Johnny Depp of the jungle, who has been involved in the local relationships, setting up hotels, and really building a project that is in harmony with the nature without compromising on the profit, or profit without compromising on the nature. But the Samana Group story didn't start with a real estate company. It didn't start with even a hotel company. It started with a land titling and surveying company. There was a law in the beginning of year 2000s in the Dominican Republic, which brought the reform of the land ownership. And a lot of farmers had to hire land surveying companies to measure their land and then process the ownership in the court in order to formalize the ownership of the land. The problem is in Samana, not too many farmers had the cash to do it. So the government allowed for those land surveying companies to do those services as an exchange for a piece of the land that they worked on. And this way, De Maria became the biggest land surveying and titling company in the whole Samana Peninsula. And besides getting a piece of the whole peninsula that it surveyed, it also built very good relationships with the local owners and very good insight into the peninsula. So that experience and that know-how really allowed for Shannon and Thomas for the 10 years to come, starting from 2007, to keep assembling and accumulating and purchasing land that now serves us as the foundation for our project. But stage two was really focused on hotels. More and more people, more and more hotel operators, more and more hotel investors that started coming to Samana and wanting to invest in an interesting, ecologically conscious hospitality project. And Samana Group, back then called De Maria, entered different joint ventures by providing the land for such an investment in return for shares. And 6 of those hotels that have been opened have one of the highest notes on those popular booking platforms that you can check. But most importantly, the 10 years of the history of this hospitality adventure of Samana Group, back then De Maria, was really a very valuable insight into marketing data of who comes to Samana, who is the client that wants to pay $300 per night to live inside the jungle, that in the end wants to also move here and buy a piece of land and build a house or buy a flat here. So that data gave us an insight to who we want to build the community really for. Third stage started when I joined the company around 4 years ago, together with our partner, Federico Jose Alvarez, who has also committed to develop the project together with his land with us. Federico Jose Alvarez represents a very reputable family in the Dominican Republic. He runs the oldest law firm in the DR, started by his grandfather. And there's even a national court in Santiago in the Dominican Republic, which is named after his grandfather. So it's very important for us to have also ourselves established within the local establishment to secure the business. Our master plan is 80% ready. We were not doing this on our own. There's a master plan for the whole Samana Peninsula, which was ordered by the president of the DR. That master plan was done by Louis Vidal Architecture Studio, which exactly outlines how the government wants to develop Samana. Basically, do not destroy the nature, keep it special, keep it the way it is, because this is the biggest advantage of Samana. And we hired the same architecture studio to also develop our master plan that is inside the bigger master plan of the whole Samana Peninsula. And that's actually, here we have to give kudos to the administration for making a master plan of the whole peninsula, because that doesn't happen too often. One of the main parts of this master plan is that we don't want to develop more than 20% of the land that we own. We really want to keep most of the land untouched, most of the land as biologically active, because this is the very reason people want to come here and people want to live here. We treat noise as pollution, and we don't fight the nature. We don't cut the trees. We build around the trees. There are obviously many other aspects of this master plan, but I wanted to mention the most important ones that make us different from other master plans. And obviously, we also care about good relationship with the local community. You can't just assume that just because you're going to bring foreign investments and you're going to build a lot of things, the local community will get wealthy together with you, because not everyone can get advantage out of it. That's why, besides hiring local community members to work with us, we are also giving licenses to run businesses that provide services with us, because it's easier to make the local community wealthy if you give them a license to run a business with us rather than just hiring them. But we also look at charity activity, mainly focused on microloans for local entrepreneurs around our area, and foreign language courses, because we believe that being able to speak foreign languages is the easiest and the cheapest way to start making more money by getting hired in more companies. Quick comment about the business model of a city. It's really not that complicated or weird. It's just different than typical real estate developers do. Typical real estate developer finds a piece of land, develops it, sells, and then searches for another piece of land, and so on and so on. A city developer is basically a developer that builds one project that is very big, which allows him to stay there not for 3 years, but for 30 years. And after everything is built, the original developer really turns into more of an administrator and manager, focusing on operating the hotels, managing the apartments on behalf of the owners, cleaning the premises, doing the waste management, transport, and also being a real estate broker to control the secondary market. It's interesting to mention here that that Punta Cana, very famous and successful tourist destination in Dominican Republic, by far the biggest in the Caribbean, has started as a private city. And the original founders of Punta Cana, which was a group of American families from New York, now generates most of their revenue from managing the airport, the biggest privately owned airport in the world, and for example, waste management company. So typical legal structure of real estate projects that are being developed within the bigger master plan is that the holding company always gives the first cash injection, while our land bank, in that case, the Maria, gives the land. And every real estate project, we have more than 25 outlined for the next couple of years within the city. Every project is being operated as a separate entity that can have also separate investors. The development of each project is pretty conservative. We do not start building unless we know there's a demand for it, and we value the demand. We evaluate the demand by pre-sales. If we know that we have around 30% of, for example, flats pre-sold, then we know we will be easily able to sell the rest once the construction starts. So this is how you manage the cash flow in a conservative way. To go more into detail, we are starting on the north side in El Valle community, and on the south side by the bay in Monterrojo Nomad City community. Nomad City Monterrojo community is more like a suburbs of the bigger existing city Santa Barbara. It's more advanced when it comes to infrastructure because we already have an asphalt road, we have fiber internet, we have water almost ready, the connection, and obviously electricity. On the ocean side, we are building a more jungle type community on top of the mountain, which would be the only community in the mountain with the view of the national park and the ocean next to our hotels. It's going to be a community for around 300 villas. Right now, we're just busy with building the roads and subdividing the plots and providing electricity and water to all of those plots. But the end product will more or less look like this. We have 4 different price points. Apartments around 40 square meters, always with a view of the ocean or the bay, start from $150,000, fully furnished. Town villas, tiny villas, 120 meters, 150 on a small plot of land, 300, 400, without the view, but already with your own garden, start from 250. And then proper big hill villas, 300, 400 square meters with a pool, start from $500,000 up to, plus 1 million plus for the most luxurious villas custom designed for client. Our partners are a pretty interesting bunch. Louis Vidal Architects is the studio I've already mentioned, very famous around the world and also in the DR. Tractor Arquitectura, which is focused on building our Monterrojo community, is an architecture studio from Tulum in Mexico. Very relevant experience for us because, like I said, we want to learn from Tulum mistakes. And Jasper Architects is an international architecture studio from Paraguay, also with offices in Berlin, Warsaw, Santo Domingo, dealing with the most luxurious villas. Constructora Lugo is a Dominican civil engineering company that does all our infrastructure work. They have been in the market for more than 30 years. They've built 3 subway stations in Santo Domingo. For those who don't know, Santo Domingo, a big Dominican metropole with 2 million people, with plenty of shopping malls, restaurants, IKEA, Starbucks, everything is there, even Porsche salon, and a subway station with 30 stations, which is actually almost the same amount as in Warsaw in Poland. I'm using the Poland reference often because I'm Polish myself, so forgive me for that. Very professional civil engineering company that makes sure that our infrastructure is built the proper way. Obviously, besides the partners, we have many senior managers on board with combined experience of 200 years of hospitality projects, real estate projects, civil engineering projects. We even have an engineer who has managed the construction of the nuclear power plant in Finland, although we do not plan to build a nuclear power plant. Why are we raising money from individual investors at such an early stage? I guess it's a matter of not wanting to lose control for such an ambitious and beautiful vision. As a real estate developer that builds such a big project, we're pretty unusual because we have a lot of land, but not enough cash. And usually a real estate developer that wants to build such a big project has to take so-called old money, which is investment banks, family offices, investment funds, pension funds. But old money means old rules. If we want to really make something special, we cannot take the old money because it will force us to take the old rules. We also don't want to sell all the land that we have because we know what else we can do and how the land can increase in value. So we want to delay the sales of the land as much as possible. That's why we're utilizing crowdfunding, raising money to this project like a startup with different fundraising rounds at increased valuation of the holding, and obviously pre-sales, because all of this, not combined with any debt, allows us to build slower or faster, but without compromising on the vision of building a luxury community in harmony with nature. That is way different than everything that is being built around the world. So far, we've been pretty successful in this. Besides the land itself, on top of $3 million founders capital injection, we've raised around 2.2 from individual investors, mainly from Dominican Republic, Poland, Mexico, and the US. And our crowdfunding has proved to be pretty successful. We're already talking about close to 9 million. So we're really doubling on this. If you want to see who else has invested in us, you can check the Samana group.net/invest page. By the way, you are free to ask questions while I speak. I will be speaking for probably 10 more minutes. You can write them in the chat, and I will then be replying to them after we're done, or you will be able to ask the questions as I just using audio. So far, we've built around 2 kilometers of new roads in the mountain that we have purchased. We're finishing construction of first 10 apartments. Obviously, the big stage one of the big community for around 120 apartments will start in August, September this year. However, we've already started some smaller constructions here and there because we're basically testing out different technologies and subcontractors. We have our first sales office. We've hired a bunch of engineers and salespeople and architects. More than 100 brokers are already acquired, and they're just waiting for us to allow them to start sales. So we're pretty confident the sales will go well. We just want to make sure we can deliver what we promise to sell, what we sell. By the end of this year, we're going to raise additional $10 million. We will sell around 100 apartments and finish the construction of 10,000 square meters of residential and commercial area. Then we're going to almost more than double these numbers in 2025. And our plan is to go public in 2027, most likely at a fideicomiso or as a trust on New York Stock Exchange, which will somehow close the 20 years of combined work on the project, starting from the purchase of the first land, because then going public allows us to get finally more cash from the bigger players, but it won't mean losing control. And even if we don't go public, because we decide to buy out all our investors and we decide to keep the corporation private, we still have a lot to do in Samana, considering how much land we're able to develop. We want to represent the new asset class in real estate called private cities, because usually those private cities are not investable, because usually they have been built cities have been built by kings, dictators, some private corporations in the US, or royal families. Think of Monaco. And the fact that we have pretty high chance to become one of the first private cities companies that goes public, and the fact that the probability of us doing this is pretty high, is, for example, backed up by the quote of one of our investors, Lucas from Pointer Capital, which is a fund focused on investing in private cities around the world. So yeah, some people already trust us that this business might work like this. How can you get involved? Well, there are a couple of ways. Obviously, besides classic real estate purchase, you can just purchase a land or a flat or a house from us and move in, or buy it to rent it. You can invest directly into holding if you want to treat this as a capital investment. But we also have like a hybrid investment product, which is a convertible loan. Basically, it allows you to start investing and already get on the train that is about to leave the station without having to decide what type of investors you're in this particular context, because it's a loan with secured interest rate, secured on the land that we own. But that loan is then quickly converted into either shares in the holding or into the shares, into the real estate that you're going to purchase from us with a bonus. So we usually go after high net worth individuals that are willing to invest in something like this, but they still don't know if they want to invest into real estate or in the shares of the holding. So they usually start with a smaller investment ticket, like $25,000, $50,000, small enough to make a fast decision, but large enough to want to visit us and spend some time here with us. And then after spending a week in Samana, you're invited by us, of course, on the house. You then decide whether you want to convert your investment into a real estate from our offer, or you want to move into being an investor in the holding. Obviously, being an investor in the holding also allows to have a first look in our all real estate offering. And if you buy a flat from us and then you want us to manage the flat on your behalf, obviously you're going to get a way better deal than just a typical buyer of a flat. Why it's worth investing in us? I believe we have a pretty unique projects on a global scale, considering the depth of experience in the region of the founders and the scale and the uniqueness of the master plan. It doesn't happen too often that other projects have such a good marketing data and pre-sales data that has shown proof of concept that what we're building has a clientele for this. We just have to now deliver the product. And it also allows to not only just buy a normal real estate and be a real estate investor, but it also allows the investor to take part in a new trend and a new asset class being created in the real estate world. So thank you so much for your attention.